old and it's tired. Make it like paraphrase.
Joe Patoski.
Well,
He's prepared.
She wrote,
listen.
You have to let him.
she wrote this whole thing.
Nick,
No, just give me a.
sit down, I wanna hear it.
All right.
Joe Nick Patoski.
It's Patoski.
There you go. I already messed up. Former senior editor for Texas Monthly and one-time reporter for the Austin American Statesman, as he presents his latest book, Austin to ATX, the hippies, pickers, slackers, and geeks who transformed the capital of Texas. Kind of a busy title.
I know, but that's
That's the way they make them nowadays.
kind of a busy cover. That stuck with you, I can see.
In this gonzo history, Joe Nick, all these years I said your name wrong.
Hey, you're not the only one.
Patoski.
There's no damn
Patoski. Oh, okay. Chronicles the modern evolution of the quirky, bustling, self-contradictory place known as Austin, Texas. He describes a series of cosmic accidents that toss together a mashup of free spirits, artists, thinkers, entrepreneurs, outsiders, and politicians who would foster the slightly off-kilter zeitgeist.
Good one.
I know, another big word. That allowed Austin to become the home of both Armadillo World Headquarters and Dell Technologies. Joe Nick's romp through Austin's recent past and hipster present connects the dots from places like Schultz Garden, Texas' oldest continuously operating business, to places. Texas' oldest.
No, the Manger's older. Someone did wrong on that PR.
Okay, I'm not the one messing up.
Austin's oldest.
Austin's oldest continuously operating business. The places like the Armadillo, where Willie Nelson and Darrell Royal brought hippies and rednecks together around music. He shows how misfits like William Sidney Porter, the embezzler who became famous under his pen name O. Henry, served as precursors for iconologists like J. Frank Dobie, Bud Shrake, and Molly Ivins. He describes a journey which eventually brought Louis Black, Nick Barbaro, and Roland Swinson to the founding of the South by Southwest Conference and Festival. Joe Nick writes about Texas and Texans. He has authored and co-authored biographies of Willie Nelson, Selena, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and the Dallas Cowboys, and collaborated with photographer Lawrence Parent on books about the Texas mountains, the Texas coast, and Big Bend National Park. He's covered conservation in the book Generations on the Land, A Conservation Legacy, and was it for sale here, right? And now I lost myself. He has covered where is it? And the State Religion of Texas in the book Texas High School Football More Than the Game. Patoski's byline has appeared in the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, Time Out New York, and here's a good one, Garden and Gun.
Yeah.
Always have a gun when you garden, obviously.
If you're in Charleston, you do.
And No Depression Magazine, for whom he is contributing editor.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Especially we'll go off on a tangent pretty quick. But carry on, the introducer, is the gentleman who did this wonderful mural, which tells the story of kind of its Austin from a South Austin bird's eye view that hangs over. It's a triptych, and this is only partial, but it tells so many great stories, including showing the famous Prairie Freak Brothers coming to Austin and Willie Nelson playing a guitar under a tree. It hangs above the produce section of Central Market Westgate in South Austin. And when Kerry and I kind of did some huddling together, it was that when he was doing that mural led to me doing the film on Doug's song very directly, Sir Doug and the Genuine Texas Cosmic Root. And I'm so thankful that we did that, and Central Market hired me to explain Kerry's mural. So when it came time that manuscript is accepted by Texas A&M Press and everything's been edited out and it comes time for a cover, I asked, I said, who's the cover designer? It's Mary Ellen Jacob, who does design for A&M Press. And I said, you need to see this. And the next thing I saw was this cover. And so I'm very pleased that they realized my vision. and Carrie was here to do it. But, thank you all for coming today, and, thank you for being here, and nice to see all friends from Fort Stockton, at least 2 different friends. Not the only one, Kirby, sit down. Have a seat. But, it's just really great for y'all, to see you all here. Just curious, I know some of you are Austin refugees and may have bailed out early and taken that funky lifestyle and the groove or whatever's cosmic about Austin and have taken it out here in far west Texas. And I like to make a point, the 3 towns, the 3 main towns, and we're going to leave South County out because we all know they're different down there. But you know, definitely Alpine and Fort Davis and Marfa and to an extent Marathon have all been infected by not only Austinitis, but these are the only small towns in the state of Texas that aren't attached to a big city that are growing. And you know, growth could be a problem to you all, and you might not like it, but the cool thing is the people that are coming here are coming by choice. They're not coming, oh, my job took me here and I have to be here. That's the rest of Texas. And, you know, I argue with people, well, you know, Houston is far more diverse, or there's Oak Cliff now and Dallas, there's cool spots. Sure there are, but no one moves to these places because they think they're cool. And even if Austin isn't cool anymore, or it was, you know, it's not the cool place that you once knew, people are still moving for that perception of coolness, not necessarily for jobs. Although it's changing now with the economy, having the best job market in the country brings people in that could be anywhere. And that, in my sense, ruins it. So Austin's at a very interesting crossroads right now. How's it going to go? Has it killed the goose that laid the golden egg? But you need to think in Austin in this terms of what's happened over the last 50 years. Whatever's happened in this incredible growth, the economy, unlike anywhere else in Texas, the economy is informed by culture. The rest of Texas, this part of Texas was built by cattle and ranching. And most of the rest of Texas extracted natural resources, oil and gas. Austin, It's been the creative mind. A lot of that has to do with the university and the state government being there. It goes back to the founding of Austin in the early 1840s. There were as many printing presses as there were churches. Big difference. That didn't happen anywhere else. There's been a history of literature and literacy. So my whole theory has been, I've been really interested in what happened. I arrived in 1973. Of course, as soon as I arrived, within a month, someone, man, you just missed it by 2 years. And I'm always throwing that, no matter when you arrive 2 years too late. Sure. And I've kind of done my thinking back to, 60s were pretty cool. And you know, you go back to the 30s when Dobie and Webb and Bedichek hung out at Barton Springs and philosophized on this rock. These guys were super intellectuals. Well, they had it all to themselves pretty much. But I've been looking at the hippies who kind of laid the foundation of what Austin is and how alternative culture drove a city and drives a city today, even indirectly. But in the 60s, if you were different, you know, and you were from Texas, Austin's always been that free space through all the early 20th century. You went to university and you were kind of protected. You could be a beatnik, you could be offbeat, you could be an intellectual academic, and get away with it. Anywhere else, you know, in Texas, people look at you different. How come you're not in business? And if you graduate from the university, you know, then you're faced with this dilemma. Do I go seek my fortune in Dallas or Houston, or at the very least, you know, do I go for LA or New York or these big cities? Or, man, you know, it's really comfortable here. And I sure like it, so I'm going to get a gig with the state, or maybe I can get something with the university. And basically, certainly in the early 70s, Austin, lowest cost of living in the 100 biggest cities in the United States, you could slack. So you didn't have to have ambition. And slack basically gives you the ability to create and do things for the wrong reasons. I call it the alternative Austin business model. And it starts, in my mind, really with the Armadillo World headquarters. Before the Armadillos, there was the Vulcan Gas Company. I write about Don Hyde taking this idea from San Francisco and bringing it to Austin. And he finally got run out of town in 1970. The vice squad told him, we don't know what we're going to get you with. Well, you got 24 hours to go before we bring charges on you on something. And he was the last guy that left. If if you had ambition, you were different. In the 60s, if you were musicians like Hal St. John or Janis Joplin, if you were a guy like Chet Helms, who learned from his holy roller preacher uncle and dad how to do offset printing, and basically took this idea to San Francisco, and with this collective, the Family Dog, birthed San Francisco poster art. Or if you were a cartoonist like Gilbert Shelton, really talented, and also did poster art, you went to San Francisco to seek your fortune. You went somewhere else. And that was forever less in Austin until around the early 70s. And then this mashup of music, country and rock, and hippies discovering they like their grandparents' music, and hippies, unlike hippies in San Francisco, like to drink beer, and they like country, and they like the fact that the music had roots, where it came from. This was different than San Francisco. And when it was really, I credit Michael Murphy, Willis Allen Ramsey, Jerry Jeff Walker's The Big Dogs in Town when I came in 73, and certainly like the album Viva Terralingua, which was recorded in Luckenbach Live, had nothing to do with Terralingua, but it had the spirit of, this was not a recording studio, this was people getting together in a dance hall having a good time. And, you know, and there were two older characters that, to me, they kind of told the story, and I glommed onto them, just as Jerry Wexler, the great talent scout who discovered Aretha Franklin, Sam and Dave, and all these people. He showed up in Austin around 1971, and Atlantic Records had just given him a new label, Atlantic Nashville. Jerry, go sign some acts, and I'm going to do this brand new country label. Jerry Wexler must have been crazy, because the first two acts he signed was one, this washed-up rock and roller named Doug Sonnet, who had hit records, She's About to Move Her, the Sir Douglas Quintet. He got popped for pot and Corpus Christi, and instead of going to prison, he lucked out and wound up in San Francisco, just in time for the Summer of Love. Was there for 3 years, had a big hit called Mendocino in 69. In 70, he gets homesick, because he's still kind of, no one gets, you know, he plays just not, he doesn't play rock and roll, but he knows how to play rhythm and blues and country. This is a guy that sat on Hank Williams' knee and watched T-Bone Walker play. He had direct transmission, and he wanted to come back. And he went back to his home in San Antonio, where he, like, you know, he's the white guy that went over to the barrio and found Flaco Jimenez, long before Ry Cooder did, or Peter Rowan. And Doug was just like this curious musician. And he came home, and he, you know, a guy in a cowboy hat, honey pointy-toed boots with boot tips, and long hair, a real cosmic cowboy. And this didn't go down well in San Antonio at this time. Basically, he got beat up by a county sheriff for being different, looking for an excuse. And so what does Doug do? Austin, safe space. And he finds his groove, he finds his music, he finds all these bands that play the kind of music he likes, and he can work with them all. He finds a place to live on a mansion in Westlake Hills that he rents, overlooking, you can see downtown Austin skyline. He's 100 yards from a roadhouse called Soap Creek Saloon. It's his own club. And it's away, it's on a dirt road, quarter mile off of BK's Road, and you can do whatever you want out there, including make all kinds of music. So Doug comes, and Jerry Wexler signed, his first signing for Atlantic Nashville. Who did you sign? Oh, this guy down in Austin, this kind of fast-talking hippie guy, Doug Sonnet, and it's like Atlantic Records is saying, you're crazy. And then who's his second signing? Well, it's this guy that's 40 years old, has been in Nashville recording for Chet Atkins at RCA, 10 albums, can't get a hit record. House burns down. So he and his extended family and band wind up in a dude ranch that's bankrupt in Bandera, where they live, and they play this little place in Helotes called Flora's General Store every Saturday. You find safe around there, and they're just kind of grooving out there. They're really hippies, but they've been country music people, but they're not Nashville anymore, so they're doing things like dropping acid and playing golf on the golf course at the Dude Ranch backwards. They start in the hole and they go back to the tee. And when someone, I think it's B. Spears, the bass player, brings some LSD out there, and it was Art and Sunshine. No, wait, it was Purple Double Note, and the next morning Willie's knocking on his door. You got any more of that Purple Jesus? He's a lot. So ideas are going around, but they're going to Austin. They have a big Winnebago. The whole band was gig, they're going to see Willie's sister Bobby. Bobby's been in and out of Austin. She plays at a piano bar, and Mike and Charlie's, and one of the biggest fans is Daryl Roy. And Daryl's already hit to Willie because Willie's in and out of Austin as a Nashville recording artist. So here comes Willie Nelson, the second signing to Atlantic Records, Atlantic, Nashville. Atlantic in New York is thinking, you know, Wexler's crazy. But Wexler being in Austin gives these guys validity. And Willie does 2 albums, Shotgun Willie and a great concept album, Faces and Stages, that don't really sell. They're not successes, but Willie has learned the possibilities of recording in New York, using horns, taking your time. He records 2 albums in 1 week. Shotgun Willie and a gospel album, The Troublemaker, because he's so used to recording in Nashville. He sets a record. No one's recorded in Atlantic Studios in New York in a week. And so he's learning things. And Doug gets a chance. He makes a Scream album with Bob Dylan in New York and Dr. John. These are not commercial successes, though. And Atlantic pulls the plug on Jerry Wexler, and that's the end of that. Doug goes on to record for Warner Brothers for a record, and you know, holding court at Soap Creek Saloon. And it takes a couple years for Willie to go up to Garland because he gets free recording time at a studio that's open. And he's got at this time a band with 2 bass players and 2 drummers, and they're playing 5-hour sets. And it's like locomotive. I remember the first time I saw them, 1973. In the fall, McMorris Ford was showing off their brand new 74 Fords. So they were advertising free soda pop, balloons, hot dogs, and live country music band. And the band was Willie Nelson's band. And they were playing in the body shop, which is a big room on a flatbed truck. And they're playing their live country music band. And then in the middle of I think Bloody Mary morning was, they started taking off. And I had seen within the previous 2 years the Grateful Dead, and I'd seen the Allman Brothers. I knew what jam bands were, but I didn't expect these yahoos to be a jam band. And they went on this 40-minute jam on one song, and it's like, you know, the jaw drops, and you know something's going on here. And when by 75, when Willie breaks out, the out-migration stopped. It really stopped when Don Hyde left in 1970. And when Doug came in from San Francisco, it's like hippies are going, I don't have to go to San Francisco anymore. I can stay here. Plus, I can drink my beer. It's a lot cheaper in San Francisco. And when Willie becomes kind of Willie, the one-name superstar, it's a rush. And people start moving in for the music. I always think Asleep at the Wheel, who played an arcane style and from the East Coast in Berkeley called Western Swing, that none of their audience knew what the hell they were doing. It's like antique music. Something like Dan Hicks plays. They come play the Armadillo, opening up for Commander Cody. It's like these old folks start rushing up to them and talking about Bob Wills, and they realize, you know, my people, they're here. So Asleep at the Wheel moves. Alan Crow moves, playing his Western Swing from Amarillo. And it's just people come from all over the United States, and no matter what they're doing, they're not doing it to get rich. They're doing it because, you know, hey, you can do this, and you can afford to do it, and there's all these clubs you can play in. And you know what? If you're pretty good, you can play in the clubs, you're validated. You're not going to get rich and famous. If you're trying to do that, you go to LA, you go to Nashville. That still exists, and there's people that are that ambitious. But that's when everything changed. And for me, it just built upon that. That was, musicians were kind of the layer that started attracting people, although this underbelly of hippiedom. And from that, you know, you start, Rick Linkletter and Lee Daniel moved to Austin, discover each other, that they both dig Super 8 cameras, and they both are slacking, and they're both tired of it. They're not showing enough foreign films at UT. Let's start our own film society so we can watch the movies we want. And wrong reasons they're starting that. Just like Eddie Wilson, 1970, he needs a place for his band, Shiva's Headband, to play because they've lost their gig at the Vulcan Gas Company. It's closed. And one night he's taking a pee outside of a bar, and he notices this building. He goes around to investigate, and it's the abandoned National Guard Armory. And within 2 months, he gets people together. Hey, let's get together and let's start a concert hall. There was no business plan. There was no investor. All wrong reasons. And out of that comes the Armadillo.
that's still the spirit. These aren't business plans. It's not money oriented, or it hasn't been until tech arrives in the 90s. But these different layers build on themselves. Film becomes a thing. It's not, Carolyn Pfeiffer was reminded she came to Austin to produce the film Roadie, and started kind of, some film people would start moving here. But really with Rick Linklater, Robert Rodriguez, and Mike Judge, who all stayed in Austin, and Mike moved from Hollywood to get here, to Austin. They came because they could work out their ideas and be independent filmmakers. Robert Rodriguez, he has the El Rey cable network. He may make terribly violent films, but he also makes family films. And he's basically vertically integrated his business. So he's cut out Hollywood producers. He's cut out a lot of middle people, so he can control what he does. And that's kind of the Austin spirit. So food, it's the same thing. I give a lot of credit to John Mackey for taking this idea of health food stores. There were always health. There was one or two in Fort Worth where I grew up. And when I got to Austin, it's like, man, there's 7 or 8. And they're all around the university. And I remember, I'd never seen anything as big as the Good Food Store on 5th and Baylor. And like, man. Well, about the time I'm shopping at the Good Food Store, that's when John Mackey takes a job there, which some of the other employees said, yeah, he was studying us. And then he opens up his own place called Safer Way on 8th and Rio Grande in an old Victoria that he and his girlfriend lived in. And then he takes this idea, I want to get bigger than this. And he goes to two other health food stores and says, join me. Look, we're going to do the biggest store yet. And these guys basically, they joined him because if they didn't, they knew John Mackey was saying, I might beat you out of your job. I might close your store. And through that, he opened up the store on 10th and Lamar, which was the biggest organic food store anywhere in Texas at the time, for sure. Maybe not what they had in LA or New York, but that begets the largest organic grocer in the world from that little idea. And what a wonderful store it was, because it's really where a lot of culture started mixing it up in Austin. I love Patty Langfair, who managed it, who knew Mackey at the Good Food Store. And she ended up getting hired at the first store and then becoming its manager. And she said, when I became manager, God, that was the cold hard truth. It was a big store, but they had just all this empty space. She said, we had a whole lot of Newson's organic apple juice. And we would just hide it and put them out front so no one would see empty shelves. And I love it, but it was also, people would go because it was a scene. You wanted to hang out at Whole Foods because people looked different. If shoppers from Westlake, the matrons would come just to have something to tell their friends back in Westlake. Oh, you couldn't believe the big hair I saw. And Patty told me the story. There was a big battle about, was colored hair okay? And that was internal. And she said, and I was dealing with the management, and they didn't know. And I remember one of my people, I saw her, and I got in her checkout line real quick because I recognized her. And I asked Lady Bird Johnson, what do you think? And she said, I just love the way the kids express themselves here. It goes back to management, and it's freewheeling for a while there. And I remember the big line at Whole Foods was, everybody wanted to get in line where the deaf-mute dancer, Jimmy Turner, was sacking because Jimmy would give you hugs. So everybody wanted hugs. This is not what grocery stores do. So I told the story when Lance Armstrong comes from Plano, where he's already, as a teenager, he's a well-known national cyclist. But at Plano High School, he's not playing football. It's like, I'm a weirdo there. And he can't wait. He said, I could have moved to California or Colorado, better cycling, but I want to be close to my mom. Austin was a place, and he finds Whole Foods practically immediately and discovers black bean tacos and smoothies. And then he discovers the Black Cat Lounge and Liberty Lunch downtown, and his life changes. And it's to the point that when he becomes a Tour de France winner, after the first or second parade, he's tired of parades, and he said, let's do music. I love music. Let's have a concert. So he hires these guys to do concerts for him, and his managers, as he's becoming a champion racer, decide to bring in these concert promoters, and they start this Capital Sports and Entertainment, and really it begets what's called now C3 Productions. The people that are going to bring a big concert out here to do Austin City Limits and Lollapalooza, that were all the outdoor events for Barack Obama, back when he was running for president and when he was president. So they become somebody, and their concerts are so successful, Lance's wherewithal, let's do a festival in Austin. But wouldn't it be cool if we could name it after something like Austin City Limits? And by wanting to do that, Austin City Limits is in the 90s, it's struggling every year, they're running out of money, they don't know if they're going to have another season. And a lot of the old guard board, well, this is not country music, those guys had other ideas. But Harry Lacona and C3 Presents kind of did the deal with the devil, created a festival that's bigger than the TV show, saved the TV show, that got to move into brand new quarters where it is state-of-the-art music performance space. So, you know, these are like simple ideas. I'm tired of parades. How do we have bands here? And this is all going in, I love the fact that my friends, Roland Swinson and Nick Barbaro, Lewis Black, and the late Louis J. Myers got this idea to do a conference, and it was for musicians that couldn't get their foot in the door in New York or LA or Nashville. So let's start this conference, and it's for outsiders, and we'll bring in some industry people, so all these outsiders can actually interface with bands, and interface with the people that make show business. Well, today there's no music business left. I mean, technology has taken it out. There are more people making music than ever. And there's more bands than ever that are coming to South by Southwest. But that simple idea built upon itself and upon itself. And Louis J. dropped out. Hugh Forrest came in to bring it interactive. Louis Black was instrumental in rounding up his friends that were now directors, Lynn Cletter and Judge, and starting this film festival. And it's the biggest thing that's of all things alternative on earth every March. And it's over the top, it's horrible, it's gridlock, and it's the coolest event if you can even get fairly crazy. And it's the same people that started it are still running. Out of the simple ideas come, you know, the biggest client. It's the biggest convention in Austin, biggest client at the convention center. So simple ideas, and it goes back. Michael Dell came to Austin basically to get away from his parents. He was in Houston, he was tinkering with computers. They wanted to go, you know, he's going to be a doctor, and he comes to UT. And I love it that within the first year, they try to intervene. They get the idea that Michael's not going to classes. He's in his dorm room at W Mall building computers, and there's this class of lawyers and politicians and state business types that this guy can really soup up your personal computer, brand new idea. He's got a line out his dorm door. So when his parents come to intervene, he has to go to his dorm mates next door and hide his stash of computers in the bathroom and just pretend everything's okay. He kind of worked out a deal with the parents, and if things didn't work out, well, by the time he's supposed to graduate, he's got a $10 million company. Wow. And within, if you bought stock when it went public, if you bought $10,000 worth, you were a billionaire within 8 years. I mean, and that actually brought money into Austin more than real estate had. And that simple idea that he created Dell Technologies. It's all these simple ideas, but I love it that even today, even if I profile a woman named Heather Brunner, who's done all these startups in Austin, technology startups, and it's really kind of ethical. It's like being open. So you want customer service, you want people rating and talking about your business, and you want to be open about it. You want the bad with the good. You know, don't hype it up and just make it all good. People aren't going to believe this stuff. And it's very ethical and has one of the most diverse companies. She's done a bunch of startups, and her last startup is WP Engine, which she went to Capital Factory, an incubator, where you can get a desk if you've got an idea, and they can introduce you to venture capitalists. If you've got a really good idea, you might be able to get someone to put a few million into your idea. And her last business, WP Engine, now has like an 8-story building in downtown Austin, and she's the CEO. But while she's working for all these different companies, she's doing consulting for a while in Memphis, and she meets a guy that she really likes. And you know, it's going beyond life. So how does she seal the deal? She's moved back to Austin, and she kind of wants to convince him, but she brings him down during South by Southwest, and all I do is listen to bands. She said, that sealed the deal. We've met in bars and dive bars in Memphis. He loved this. He does carpentry work, and he came in. So music remains this underpinning, whoever you are. And I like to bring out biggest real estate firm of its kind in the world is Keller Williams. And Gary Keller is a very wealthy man, and he's also a guitarist. So, in these problems where what's going to kill Austin is you can't slack anymore. If you have an idea, you can do it, but you got to have a little entrepreneurial skill, or somebody's money has to be in your back pocket when you get here to Austin. And Gary Keller is one of those that has the wherewithal to become a donor class and is recognizing that there's limits to all this. So he started these organizations, all ATX, which is trying to address, how do you keep musicians here instead of forcing them out with teachers and police with environment out to the suburbs and smaller towns, which is a good thing because Lockhart is now a big musicians town. And if you look at the last election, that Hayes County and Williamson County, the neighboring counties of Travis, they went hard blue, and they didn't before. And so I like the way that's spreading, but I also like the idea, how do you keep people in here? And Gary did put his money where his mouth is. He bought the land on South Lamar where Saxon Pub is. He bought Saxon Pub's building and then went to Joe Abels and said, I'm giving you this lease, which is it's a buddy discount lease. So they stay there. And so you can go there, how many nights a week? 7 nights a week there's music, and there's at least 3 to 5 different acts. They keep rotating the house and they turn it over. And on Friday you go at 6 o'clock and it's free. You can hear Denny Freeman, who used to lead Bob Dylan's band and was the guitarist in Paul Ray's Cobras. Denny was Stevie's direct mentor, Stevie Vaughan's mentor. But Denny plays in a band with Speedy Sparks, the bassist with the Texas Tornadoes, and with Doug Som's various ensembles. And John X. Reed was with Freedom the Fire Dogs, the first country rock band that I saw. They were hippies, but they played real country music. That's when I saw it in 1971 visiting Austin and going to the split rail. And it's like, that blew my mind. That's when I saw that stuff. So it's still there. It's a little harder to find. It's a little harder to keep. And I love it that I can still park here in Alpine and Marvin, Fort Davis. And it pisses me off when I go to Austin. And if we go to a show in a restaurant, and valet parking does not sit well with me, but I got to pay for parking once. And $15 at the Bass Concert Hall just to park in a UT garage. Well, that's what Sean Somme called whenever his dad had hassles. Doug Somme, it's the groove tax. So now there's a groove tax you got to pay. But it's there, and I want to say that it's not me. It's the people before me that I got to learn from, and I hope people learn from these origin stories about how it is. I'm really hoping that people that are still coming to Austin are still curious enough. It's like, why did I come here and why is this different from everywhere else? Because it still isn't like other cities. And what drives it, even though the economy's changing, it's still driven by culture. It's not oil and gas, it's not cattle. Also is built on a creative mind, certainly in the last 50 years, and it continues to be. But one of my mentors for this and kind of guideposts was one of the many poster artists in Austin who I remember going to TCJC, Tarrant County Junior College, and I was working at KFAD, the coolest radio station on earth. Got paid $1.60 an hour, and they had a library that was bigger than this room. My instructions were, here's when you play the commercials and play really good music the rest of the time, okay? Great job. And I'm at KFAD, and I remember Kerry Dawson came up and visited me from K98, and also, but I kept seeing like the Flying Burrito Brothers, Rye Cooter, Captain Beefheart are coming to Texas, but they're not even wasting time in Dallas, Fort Worth. They're not going to Houston, they're going to this one place. So while I'm at KFAD, I go down to Austin. I went on a Saturday morning to the Armadillo World headquarters and went in the back, because I want to find out. Also at TCJC, there was a guy that had a panel van, and it had a big armadillo on the side. And I asked the guy, I said, Lou, how did you do this? He said, oh, a guy in Austin painted for you named Jim Franklin. I said, how did you do that? He said, well, I traded him a case of beer. So I got to go down, and that one morning at 10, I remember I woke up Jim Franklin, hung out of a bunk bed, and met his boa constrictor snake. And it wasn't very long that I met Eddie Wilson, who I quickly could discern this guy's sort of in charge if you could be in charge. And that was kind of my template. But when I moved, the one thing I wanted to do is I've been reading in Minneapolis, I've been reading Chet Flippo in Rolling Stone and in Cream Magazine, but Chet's stories about the armadillo and then about Doug Somm at Soap Creek Saloon. Man, I want to go. And I've written a review on Doug Somm that got published in Cream Magazine. So I'm moving to Austin to write about music. I'm not moving to LA, I'm not moving to New York. I'm moving to Austin because there's something happening here. And one of the first things I did when I got to, it was within a week or two, we went to Soap Creek. And it was everything that Chet Flippo wrote about and more. I mean, it was magic. And part of that magic was their posters that came out every month, which I immediately collected. And I was lucky enough that I started hanging out there, befriended George and Carl Majeski that ran it, but actually got on 2 posters. So I'm going to take just a little pause here to introduce you all and let him come up and talk about his Austin. From Houston originally, here's Carry On, who did my wonderful cover. Carrie, get up here. Tell me
what am I supposed to talk about? Okay, I remember the first time I met Joe Nick. It was at Soap Creek. I don't know if you remember this, but Carlin brought you up and said, this guy wants to meet you. And it was you.
I did.
Do you remember that? But anyway, I remember the very first time I met you. And I also remember the very first time, which is in your book, Lewis Black came to Soap Creek. And I met him that particular night too, because Doug was playing. And we're standing back by the fireplace, and there's this guy right next to me, which was Lewis Black. I didn't know who Lewis Black was. Nobody knew. He was just there that very day. He just came to Austin. And he turned to me and goes, is it like this all the time out here? And I said, well, whenever Doug plays, it sure is. But,
And that's when Lewis said, I'm home.
yeah.
And as I pointed out to Lewis, you were 2 years too late.
Well, I moved to Austin January 1970. To get out of Houston because I was tired of getting the KKK shooting guns at me. And that was true. I worked at a place called Space City News, and they would actually shoot up the place periodically. And when the police helicopter pulled me over by a helicopter, got pulled over by a helicopter, I knew it was time to leave Houston. So I came to Austin with no plan. My plan was to go to UT. Talked my parents into letting me go to UT, so they paid me to go up there, which was really my excuse to go to Austin. So I went to UT for about 3 years and took art courses, but I never could make it through the spring semester, because I would make it through the fall semester, but spring, Barton Springs is happening, and I would just slack, and I would always drop out. So I really just didn't make it through school. Then in 1974, I painted this mural. Me and 2 other guys painted this mural on 23rd Street, the ostentatious mural, which is still there. It's on the side of the co-op. And we had gone to California, just like everybody else. Joe Nick is correct. Everybody was thinking they wanted to go to San Francisco, to California. And I went out to San Francisco in 1972. I was thinking I wanted to move there because my brother lived there. I had a place to stay, so I went out there and I spent the summer in 1972 in San Francisco, and then I came back to Austin. I remember coming back after 3 months, and I was just going, I cannot live in San Francisco, because I just saw these Austin hippie chicks that were tan and friendly, and just, as opposed to the greeny dress wearing San Francisco girls, they were not tan, they're all white. And here's these free-spirited hippie girls that like to dance. I said, I got to come back. I can't live out. I'm from Texas. I don't have to live here. So I knew that I had to come back. So anyway, we started doing that mural, and here's how we did that mural. We were in California, me and Rick Turner and Tom Bauman, and we saw a bunch of murals out there. California had a bunch of murals, in LA especially. And we said, we have to do a mural in Austin. So we came back on, the co-op owns the University Co-op on 23rd Street, if you know where that is. There's a big wall there, the drag vendors were there. We approached the university, said, look, the University Co-op said, we want to paint a mural on this wall. And they were like, we don't do stuff like that. And we said, okay, here's the deal. We already have a plan. Here's what it's going to look like. We will paint the mural for free if you give us the art supplies. They said, oh, okay, we'll do that. So we went ahead and painted that mural, and it was such a hit, and they loved it, the University Co-op loved it, everybody loved it. The University Co-op decided to go ahead, and they gave us $1,000. And we thought that was, oh, $1 million. So that mural is still there. University Co-op has gone down a lot. They don't sell books anymore, they sell UT paraphernalia. But they're actually making a documentary about that mural now. So it's actually a good thing that mural was ever done. Now, this mural here, it's in the book cover, Joe Nick was talking about. This is an interesting story of this mural. I get a call that the Central Market Southgate wants to talk to you about painting a mural. And can you come out and meet this guy, Stephen? And I said, okay, I'll go out there and meet this guy. I wouldn't mind painting a mural for a legitimate business instead of all these, Planet K murals I've been painting. Real business. Okay, I'll go do that. So I went up there, and there's this guy named Stephen. I go in there in this office, and there's this guy named Stephen, and I'm thinking he's the manager of that Westgate Whole Foods. I don't know who Stephen is. It's just a guy named Stephen. So I'm sitting there, and as soon as I walk in, he goes, oh, carry on. And he goes, I'm Stephen. And I was like, all right. And he goes, tell me about Doug's song. That's all I wanted to talk about, Doug. And I had to talk about Doug and, go through the stuff. And after about 20 minutes, I realized this was Stephen Butt that I was talking to, of the Butt family. This, the H.E. Butt people. This is like, wow, you're Stephen Butt. I thought you were just a guy. Anyway, he is just a guy. But he happens to be in a rich family that has a, mega million business. So anyway, ended up painting that mural for Stephen, and his idea was he wanted to have a mural. He moved to Austin in maybe 72 or something.
Yeah, he'd gone to Trinity, I guess he was doing grad school work in Austin. It was not in San Antonio where the family was, or in Corpus where the family was. So that was kind of the time that he got unleashed for a little bit.
Yeah, he kind of was the black sheep, I gathered this, of the family a little bit. He would go to Armadillo and hang out and do whatever he would do there. And Stephen was probably really a hippie at heart, but, he had the family business to run. So, so anyway, his idea for the mural was he wanted me to paint a mural of what it looked like in 1972 when he was moved there, when he was hanging out there. I was like, I don't know about that. Like, a lot of this stuff is not there anymore. I said, how about if we just do a mural of Austin with the old stuff that was there and the new stuff? There's a lot of new stuff here that's kind of cool too. Let's just do a mural of, all the different little stuff. And so he said, okay, that's a good idea. So he left me alone to paint this mural. And it took me like 6 months to paint it. And he didn't tell me what to do at all, really, just Austin mural. So I painted all this stuff on there, and when I finally showed him the final painting, the only thing they really did not like in this whole mural, if you look real closely, there's this Chainsaw Massacre guy on there. Right next to Alamo Theater.
Leatherface, you gotta include it.
Leatherface, right, Leatherface, you gotta put Leatherface, there's a Leatherface and there's a slacker chick. So I go, he goes, that might scare children. They see that up there. I said, well, that's the plan, yes. It's Leatherface. He's supposed to scare everybody. I said, no. I said, I think that needs to stay. So okay, fine. So that was really all that they would said anything about that mural. Now, I think the reason he really picked me to paint that mural was to get information about Doug out of me. He knew I knew Doug, and so he asked all these questions about Doug and blah, 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 and everything else. And then, after it was done, he hired Joe Nick to explain what everything was, and Joe Nick did a fabulous little, he did explain everything.
You can get it at the produce. They've got them there. You can still pick one up later.
Yeah, they have a little brochure that shows the mural and explains what every little single thing on here is and what it represents. Because everything is actually supposed to be something on here. There's the grackle on there, there's Deep Eddy, there's the Three Brothers, a Frisbee carrying dog, and whole thing. And that did kind of maybe led to the Doug Saw movie. I don't know exactly how, but he got to meet you, and I think it was really secretly he wanted to meet these people. You know, I think the mural maybe was secondary. I don't really know, but he ended up doing. I ended up painting that mural, and it worked out very well for me. And and the thing about this mural is it's indoors, so it doesn't have sun damage like most murals that are outdoors. It will eventually fade out. You know, it doesn't matter how much you coat them. They're
Harder to graffiti too.
Yeah, no graffiti.
yeah, there's no graffiti, so it's indoors and it's going to stay. It looks nice. You are correct, that's Chuck.
Well, when you're talking about the co-op mural.
They're having, now, just today, I was, Tom Curry is right here. There's Tom Curry, standing artist Tom Curry. He's supposed to paint a mural on this very building. They've been asking him to paint a mural on this very building. So he was asking me about it, what should I charge?
Maybe you could do it.
Well,
It's
hey, he's trying to push it off on me.
Well, you are out here a whole lot now.
Y'all work together.
And maybe you need a reason to be here.
No, I don't want to do it. I think Tom Curry is the one that
you have
needs to
to. I
do
just
it.
spoke to Dan, it's a collaboration.
Tom Curry lives in Alpine, the famous Texas artist. He's the one that did the logo for the bookstore and everything. He's the one that needs to paint this mural. I didn't realize the wall was.
You know, you already have one smaller mural in Railroad Park.
Yeah, I do have a little mural at the railroad park over there on that caboose. If you ever
Yeah,
go
we
there to look.
stuck it up there, Leah,
Ah,
a group of us.
yes, you're correct.
Liz,
That's Susan Curry right there. Tom's wife. So, I've been coming out here for a few years now, and the reason I did come out here the very first time, I always wanted to come to Big Bend my whole life. I always thought it was so far away. But I came out here when the Texas Tornadoes played the Viva Big Bend. That I didn't make it the first year, but I came the second Viva Big Bend because the Texas Tornadoes were playing. I thought, great. So I friends with Sean Song, so I came out to see them. And then I said, oh, okay, I'm one of these guys that go, I want to move here. This is where I really belong. This is cool out here. This is how it used to be in Austin. Something is out here. The air, the water, I don't know what it is. I think it's just the open space and the scenery. It's just really spectacular. So I come out here all the time. It doesn't take much to get me out here. As you can see, I'm here for this.
Oh, they're killing me.
I'm just telling you, right? Just saying, the whole thing. So, Joe Nick has been a big influence on me, for years and years, for whatever reason, that our paths have crossed over the years. And yes, I did put him on 2 calendars on Silk Creek Saloon, but he deserved to be on. Basically, and in the book, I want to keep going on, but for 30 years I worked at a place called Esther's Follies.
And that story's in here too.
That's in here too, and which was interesting to read about Esther's. And my plan when I came to Austin was basically just to go to live in Austin, because there's Barton Springs and the hippie chicks and the $10 lids. It was cheap to live, didn't cost anything to live here. You know,
They wouldn't get hassled.
yeah, you can get hassled. There's no police pulling me over in helicopters. There's still the rednecks out there, but if you hung around the university area, you were safe. So it was all good. Now I ended up forming a band, being in a band, painting murals, being an actor, being a stand-up comedian. All this stuff I never planned on doing. I just kind of fell into it because it was the least resistance. It was easy. It was really easy to work at Esther's Follies. And the reason I started working at Esther's Follies, and this is the truth, I was into Uranium Savages, and I still am, for years. The Savages played, but the thing is, whenever we played, we had to go to a club and take all our costumes to a club and then leave, you know. It was just a lot of work. Esther's Follies had their own dressing room, but they just leave their costumes there. They get to take all their stuff home. Plus, you get to be in a dressing room with all these actresses. And they don't care. Actors and actresses are the craziest, wildest people. Not musicians, not artists, not comedians. It's the people that are in theater are the ones that really like to party. So, I found that out pretty quick, so I was like, here I was, and the reason they hired me at Esther's, because it was all gay guys. I was a straight guy. I was the one that played all the rednecks. They brought me in and go, well, you're a straight guy. So, and luckily I was, because all these beautiful women work there. And, which got me in trouble. But, all I'm saying is, I went to Esther's, and Michael Shelton, the guy that ran it, said, do you want to work here? And I said, well, we'll come back next week. Okay, so I come back. So for years and years, it was just come back next week, come back next week. 30 years later, I'm still coming back next week. When I turned 60, I go, I give up. I'm out of Esther's. I've done it enough. And so it was an easy job, it was a good job, and it was my job. And Joe Nick is right. You do have to make money to live there in Austin, but you can find different ways to make a little bit of money, and you can actually live still not too expensive. I had to move to Spicewood, Texas to get out of Austin. I lived in Clarksville for years, but my taxes were going up and up and up. I had to finally move and sold my house to a girl from California for a lot of money and moved out to Spicewood. So the bottom line is I'm still in the Austin area, but like a lot of people, I don't live in Austin. It's still there. I can drive in there in 30 minutes. I can be in Austin in 30 minutes, but luckily I don't have to actually live in there and be on Mopac every day, or I-35. So the bottom line of the whole thing is, I thank you, Joe Nick, for letting me do the cover, and it was a financial pleasure, as Kinky would say. That certainly I get a check, and this was like around Christmas, I get money from Joe Nick. I didn't know he was going to give me money for this.
All the wrong reasons.
I know. Expect money for stuff. Like he's like, oh, I get a check in the mail. Like, whoa. So it's the whole bottom line. The whole thing is, it almost like makes everything legitimate in a weird way that he wrote. For years and years, I was told by my parents, by outside people, that I was doing the wrong thing. I was, I was a bad person because I was a hippie. I'm smoking pot, and I'm playing in the band. I'm being an actor and doing comedies. Oh, you should do regular stuff. Don't do all this crazy stuff. And now it almost makes it like legitimate that we did all this stuff. It was like, hey, we were kind of right. We were right. And then Trump got elected and all that. But I know you're a big Trump fan.
Yeah.
Your
But
friendship's
when
over.
Trump did get elected, the very next day, I remember a lot of people were walking around, oh, what the hell happened? Austin, we didn't expect that. But I realized, you know what, now we can't slack anymore. We really have to go back to work on this. We can't just take everything for granted anymore. We have to actually persist. All right,
Real quick, I mean, the whole Esther's Folly thing started when Shannon and Michael started this actual lunch place downtown an old lumber yard. And they wanted to do, it was legitimate for a while until Chevy Neal left to work full-time at a place called Jeffrey's, which was one of the first fine dining places in Austin. And then, someone else started booking music. The music was incidental to what Shannon and Michael were doing. They were doing theater stuff. And pretty soon, the music became a bigger thing than what they were doing. So they found a different place on East 6th Street and started the first Esther's and then the second Esther's, which is a tradition today. It's a great window. So you want to figure out why Austin's Austin, and you just got here, go watch Esther's Follies, and you're going to get a full head of it. And so it's all these stories. People are doing it just because they're cool ideas, not because you're going to make much out of it. I'm going to read this real quick because it's just, there were two events separated by 132 years were Austin's big bangs. The first declaration by Mirabeau Lamar, the second president of the Republic of Texas, who shot a buffalo at around 8th and Congress on a hunting expedition in the fall of 1838. It was so exhilarated, he and his hunting party went up to this hill, which is basically where the Capitol is now sited, and declared this should be the seat of empire.
And he proceeded to move, when he was president, the capital of the Republic of Texas from Houston to Austin. Even though Austin was on the edge of the frontier, was surrounded by a hostile Comanche, and there was no reason for it to be a capital other than aesthetic. It was pretty. They had trees, they had a river and all that, but it wasn't a port. It wasn't like Houston, even though Houston's malaria infested. And Sam Houston did manage to move the capital back for a year or two to Houston before it came back to Austin. But that was the first big bang. And the Declaration by Mirabeau Lamar created the town inside the capital that grew into a city. The second declaration by Eddie Wilson, when he found the armory in June of 1970 that would become the Armadillo World Headquarters, led to the opening of the Armadillo, the first modern institution of a whole other Austin. This Austin was a creative capital of global importance with a seductively attractive lifestyle. No one else has got Barton Springs. I don't care where you are. You know, Valparaiso's nice, but you got to have a city outside of it. You're not going to find a downtown within a mile of a spring-fed natural pool like that, where any month of the year you can go swimming. A creative capital of global importance with a seductively attractive lifestyle and abundance of jobs and opportunities. A model city for the 21st century. Land, oil, cattle, and gas built Texas. The creative mind and a strong sense of place made Austin Austin. So, if y'all would like to do some question and answers, I'd much rather, we've monologued enough. Let's discuss. Anybody have any questions?
Do you remember the poetry scene there with Pat Taylor losing out that little dog?
Oh, yes, and in fact, the one literary character, which was almost an incidental chapter, because really, writers preceded the musicians. Musicians didn't show up till 1868, formalized at Schultz Garden, which is about formed by Germans for the purpose of singing, dancing, drinking beer, and making music. But writers, and like I said, the printing press goes back to the start of Austin. Stephen F. Austin recruited people to move to his colony by printing up broadsides in New Orleans and informing them. This was a very literary audience. So my literary character is Steve Harrigan, who I knew at Texas Monthly, and I always loved his origin story. When we talked at Texas Monthly, you know, how'd you get into this? Well, when I started, I mowed lawns. And man, he spoke to me because I'm into the zen of lawn mowing. That's my thinking time. Whether I'm pushing or I'm riding more. And Steve moved actually for the reason he said his brother was going to St. Ed's. He was in Corpus. He didn't know what he was going to do. But he went to St. Ed's and looked at it, and he saw a skateboarder, and he'd never seen a skateboard before. That sealed the deal. And it's like, where were you living in Corpus where you didn't see a skateboard? But he saw something new in Austin with skateboarding, and then the first year of St. Ed's, he discovered the University of Texas showed film, and it wasn't like in a movie theater. And they showed films that weren't shown in movie theaters, and these were radical ideas. Steve's track, as he moved to the University of Texas, was as a poet, because there was no writing program at the university. I mean, he ends up being a mentor and teaching for the Michener program, which is a world-class program for writers and novelists. I mean, if you want to get your start, and you're lucky enough to get into that program, you're kind of made. And that wasn't the way it was when Steve first came. So poetry was really feeding it. But then, and he was, I'm trying to remember because Cat Little Dog was part of this, I'm forgetting the name of the journal that they all started. And he was involved for a couple of years, and then he kind of got the bug to do narrative. And real simple ideas. It's like, he didn't know Jim Franklin, but he knew something was happening with the Armadillo. So he wrote to this guy, blind, at Rolling Stone magazine. He knew he was from Texas, named Grover Lewis. And would you like an article on Jim Franklin? And Grover Lewis said, well, why don't you show it to us? If we like it, we'll print it. It's kind of the same way I got into Cream magazine, writing a letter to Lester Bangs and getting a letter back. This was kind of on a different scale. But, so he didn't know Jim Franklin. And he called him up blind, and Jim was nice enough to sit for him. And he got to write a profile in Rolling Stone on Jim Franklin that Grover Lewis accepted. And Steve still said, I still didn't know what I was doing. So his story is just wonderful, how he kind of felt his way in, and he went from poetry to narrative, to writing magazines, to writing novels, to writing nonfiction books, doing screenplays. You could argue that his best friend, Lawrence Wright, is the complete writer in Austin. But I would say Steve has just done more elements of different kind of writing than even Larry has. Larry's written his own plays and performed in them. And of course, Larry has his own band called Hoodoo. So this is like, it's part of, even in literature, it's who we are. So I just, Stephen started as a poet, and there is a great poetry scene. To be honest with you, all this stuff, including music, I could scratch the surface. I couldn't get into a lot of depth. I could follow like one character to give you an origin story, and then there's all these things, but there were a lot of other contemporary writers I learned since I could have included in this, and I even got dinged by Shannon Davies, the editor at Texas A&M University Press. She said, "Did you put enough names in there?" And I said, "Look, I'm I'm a detail guy." And I got dinged when I did my Willie book for the Washington Post, said, "Too much detail." And my response is like, bullshit, people want to read this. And it remains, I like to think, Willie's done two of his own books, 3 or 4 of his own books and autobiographies. I would hold my book against anything Willie wrote or anything anyone else has written about Willie. And it's not bragging if it's true. And that's, I just feel like I got the detail and the facts, and I drilled down. And that's what I try to do here. If there's too many names, I apologize, but at the same time, this is a really complex story. But when you start thinking about it, all these threads really are woven together. And today, technology reflects on all these other sounds. I mean, the band of the 90s and the early aughts in Austin Spoon. Britt Daniel worked for Human Code and for a bunch of tech companies, as did Jim Eno, came to Austin from Houston for Motorola. And because they worked at tech companies, they found each other, and that created a band. So, and film and technology certainly are doing so much together. In fact, Robert Rodriguez was able to pull off this James Cameron film. I met one of James Cameron's camera people who does this high technology camera, Richard Hollander. And Richard did not want to be in Austin for 2 years. But he works for James, and Robert doesn't work in Hollywood. Robert works, if I'm going to do this film, we're doing it here in Austin. And we have the technology here, and we have the ease, and we have Barton Springs. You don't have that in LA. You don't have to drive an hour out to Malibu. So, all these elements are still playing out, and despite what I consider to be real challenges, what I'm looking for is the mojo still there, is the groove, cosmic thing. It's harder to find, but it's there. And it's all perspective. I've been using The Broken Spoke as the great case. Chris, my wife, my girlfriend at the time, was a waitress, 75 or 76, working for James and Annetta White. So we got to know the Whites at The Broken Spoke pretty early. And I've always, and got to see it basically age. And James is kind of this caricature, dresses up and wears a cowboy hat and has a spiel for the tourists. But if you come in from out of town, especially or from another country, you feel so welcome in a place that in 1972, if you had long hair, you would get your ass kicked. It's changed that much. And I remember it used to be the edge of town. Certainly when you got to Ben White and Lamar, there was a traffic circle. I remember there was always bluebonnets there. And then it was 12 miles till you got to Oak Hill. Something like that, 7 miles to Oak Hill. And there was like one Victorian house in Oak Hill, and that was it. And today, that's all urban sprawl. And, people bemoan, they go, God, can you believe all the condos that are encroaching on the Spoke? And if you've been there since way back when, you probably think, damn, but I'm still glad it's there. But if you've just arrived in Austin, and you're driving South Lamar, and you're looking at like all these bars and, hoity-toity restaurants and condos and such, and all of a sudden, bang, there's a real genuine honky-tonk in this. How cool is this? So it's all really about perspective. And it's when you came. When I came, it was the best time. And I've gotten to see, it gets degraded over the years, because I really wish in a lot of ways I was still, 23 years old and everything stopped. Because it was pretty damn good. And so whenever you came, the first time is usually the best and the sweetest. But, if you've been away for a while, you go back, and I've lived 25 years outside of Waverly. I'm 46 miles from downtown Austin. I'm 55 from downtown San Antonio. I've got two diametrically opposed cities at my beck and call. And I mean, you know, one's blue collar and provincial and old, really old, and one's new and shiny. But I could say, I mean, Austin's still my place. And I feel it, and now I'm more of a tourist. But you know, I go to Barton Springs. I'm not a tourist, I'm back home again. And there's all of these touchstones. And as long as they're there for enough of them are there for me, I continue to be seduced. And what I see today is even people that just arrived. At the Austin Library, I did a talk, and it was great because a lot of old friends and old characters, a lot of people in my book turned out. And it was great. The very last question came from an older woman in the front. She said, I just moved here last week from Minnesota. And I rode my bike downtown from 37th Street. And so, how you like it so far? She said, I found my place. And it's one of these places, because it's been historically welcome to outsiders, it's full of outsiders, that it's welcoming that if you just got there, you're there. And I mean, it's, okay, fine. You know, you can get guilt trip. You haven't been here long enough and all that. But it really is that open a place. And it remains that way, even though it's harder to be, you know, to let that creative force guide you all the way. And you can't slack like you used to. Any other questions? Yes?
How did a book about the cultural history of Austin get published by Aggies?
You know why? Because my original publisher was the University of Texas Press, and we came to agree to disagree. There's nothing like having editors tell you, and editors who really don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, telling you what you can and can't put in the book. And it was things like, you know, well, what about GSD&M? And I said, they're ed people. Yeah, okay, they did Southwest Airlines account. Did they change the game of advertising or how a message comes out? No. So they don't get in. They're not South by Southwest. It doesn't resonate globally. In agency world, you get some respect. But no, and you can't put Liz Lambert in here. And I don't know what their beef is with Liz Lambert. And they said you can't put Lance Armstrong in here. And it's like, you know, if you think he's toxic, you know, you don't understand what I'm doing here. And I just don't think throughout it, they make great taco books these days, you know, great taco guides, and, you know, and they're publishing Steve Harrigan's 1,000-page history of Texas, which is something to look forward to. But I also think part of the problem is when my book was scheduled to come out with them, I saw their catalog for the spring of 2017, and my last real round of conversations were in late November 2016 after the election. And their cover was inside Hillary Clinton's campaign. They put a lot of money on that. They bet big and they bet wrong. So I think that they were really scrambling to try to save face and moreover save money that they committed. So it didn't work out. And after, you know, arguing with people that I thought I had a good history with, to go to A&M Press, and when I saw Shannon Davies, who used to work at UT Press, she's the head editor, and I go into her office and she hugs me. You go to where you're loved, and you don't go where you're, you know, UT Press people didn't get it. And, you know, that's their loss, not my loss. I got to do the book I wanted to do. And to me, the validation ultimately is people that I know that were involved with this and to get their feedback, or the characters, you know, to talk to the woman that started women's roller derby. You know, as a sport. I didn't write about UT athletics, because that's the pro football team. If you want to watch pro sports, you watch UT. But I did write about the one sport that's evolved out of Austin in the modern era, and that's women's roller derby started in Austin. And these hundreds of roller derby teams, leagues, all over the world now, that started at Casino El Camino Bar in Austin, and it was a guy that had the idea. But the four women that really made it kicked the guy out within a matter of a month. And this is our deal. And they made it a women's sport, women's specific. And, you know, to me, a really great sport. Just like Merlin Tuttle came to Austin because he was a biologist and a world expert on bats. And he started reading the paper in Austin. I remember, you know, smelling bats downtown, but that was something you call the exterminator for. And Merlin kind of thought, this was crazy. I'm moving here. And he moved to Austin, basically not only to educate the local populace, but to start Bat Conservation International. And the fruit of that label is, you go to the Congress Avenue Bridge that they wanted to exterminate when they rebuilt it in the 1970s, and there's, between March and October, there are several thousand people hanging on the bridge to watch bats emerge. And so, you know, Merlin just he wanted to write something that he thought was wrong. He thought this would be a good place. I don't know that he thought he was going to make millions. I mean, he's become recognized as the world's leading authority on bats. And of course, it's closer to San Antonio. Bracken Cave, 50 miles south of Austin, 10 miles north of 20 miles north of San Antonio, is the world's largest bat cave. It's also the biggest collection of mammals on Earth. And if you can get in there and watch an emergence, that's pretty great. Can't get in. Austin, you know, let's go have a drink, let's go eat out, and then let's go saunter onto the bridge and watch this, and then we'll go up to the Continental Club. It's only like less than a mile walk away. And you can't do that anywhere else.
We
So-
had, our office was right in Merlin's office on Capitol, Texas highways.
Oh my
At
God.
our advertising agency. It was a little rain. Because the ventilation system brought the smells back around.
It gets funky.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, once I was educated, I started realizing when I went downtown in the 70s and walked to all these old buildings, you know, you'd smell that smell, and now I know, hey, that's bad. You got bats here. And now it's not an asset that you look for. And there's nothing like emergencies. I mean, the one at Bracken Cave is so rank. I mean, it's you almost choke on it. It's like, you know, getting close enough for this skunk smell is chemical. But, you know, Congress Avenue Bridge, not too bad. And, you know it's doing good. It's keeping the insect population down.
Yep.
And it really, you know, that's a pretty spot at sunset. So, you know, all these people working out these ideas for all the wrong reasons. That's this place. And whether it has spread out here. And whether it's an irritation, I would just argue that compared to people from other cities in Texas or certainly surrounding states, your Austin visitors should be tolerated a little bit more, and they're going to go home anyhow. A few of them are going to say they want to move here, and you know, when I did Texas Mountain Book and Val and Tom said, "When are you going to move out here?" My wife and kids were all like, they were arms crossed. "You want to move out there, don't you?" Well, you know, I could. I sure would like to get, if any of y'all involved with Stoll Ross, I'd love a semester out here teaching just to spend more extended period of time, because my hits here are pretty quick and not deep enough, and I'd sure like a project where I spent more time. We went down to the park, but it was a year ago, September. I haven't been back. And I should be at the park 4 times a year at the very least. And this is Mythic, Texas. When I was 8 years old, my daddy got his brand new 59 Studebaker Silverhawk. And he took my sister and I from Fort Worth, and we went down to the Alamo, where I could see, you know, the place where my hero, Davy Crockett. When I was 5, I had a Davy Crockett outfit, coonskin cap and everything. And actually, I got Steve Harrigan to get Fest Parker to autograph it, and I'd say that. Yeah, my dad took me to in his Silverhawk down to the Alamo with my sister, and I was so underwhelmed and disappointed. This is it. Well, believe it or not, the museum looks kind of cool across the street. But, you know, you just have this image and this myth built up, and I was bummed. But on that same trip, the next thing we did is we drove to Marathon and stayed the night in the Marathon Motel. And I remember the first time I saw a space heater like they had. And then the next morning, we drove down to Big Bend National Park. And I remember being at the Chisos Lodge and seeing the little hill. And of course, after we ate lunch, and I was just charmed knowing we passed this place called the Christmas Mount. He said something, "What, God, this looked like Texas that I read about in my Pecos Bill books." And it was the Texas of the imagination, Mythic Texas. And I remember that little hill right outside the lodge. I climbed that, and I thought it was kind of a big deal. It's hard to climb. It's a little rock. And to go back later and see, oh, what a little dinky hill that was. To get across the big bend. I mean, the 8-day hike that we did advanced the Parks and Wildlife magazine from Rio Grande Village to Lajitas. You know, one of the hardest things I've ever done. I mean, I've got to see it every which way, but I always, every time I go back in Jesus Mountain, I think of that little mountain I climbed, and just, it fulfilled my longing for what I thought Texas was. And this place remains that. And, you know, there's not a traffic light yet. And I hope you can resist that. The little place I live in outside of Wimberley, when I moved there was one light, and there's like 7 or 8 now. I'm still far away enough from town and landlocked by larger ranches. And my stretch of the Blanco River is upstream. And instead of being at Barton Springs, I swim laps. I'll be starting pretty soon and do that. And it's nice. It's not as beautiful as Balmorhea or Barton Springs, but for my own little place, it's pretty great. It's the first place I've lived where I thought, you know, this is it, carry me out. 25 years later, we're still persisting. But I always feel a tug for here. And this is my place too, even though I've never really lived here. And, you know, there's not many places where you feel place informs what you do or really is, you know, feeds the soul. And this is one of these places, as is, you know, even although a lot of things have happened, Austin is still that place to me. And so I've read about biographies, and all my biographies about context, what's around it. So, you know, Willie is about Abbott, Texas. It's about coming from Arkansas, this place in Searcy County, Arkansas. Why someone from Searcy County would come to Abbott and think it's paradise, because you can actually make a crop. And how someone coming out of Abbott learns about honky-tonks by crossing the line to go over into McLennan County where West is, and, you know, getting that, and then wandering around, you know, trying to get your foot in the door in Waco, San Antonio, Fort Worth, Vancouver, Washington, back to Fort Worth, Houston, and then finally Nashville, how all these places, you know, inform the person, and then how finally he finds this place, when really it's the end of his, it should be the end of his career, but Austin becomes this place that reinvents everything. Stevie Ray Vaughan's all about Oak Cliff, and what it's like growing up in Oak Cliff, the poor part of Dallas, and, you know, this connection between the Vaughn brothers growing up in white blue-collar, and the fact that T-Bone Walker roamed these streets, the black part of Oak Cliff, and, you know, 20, 30 years before they did, and how that informs who they are, and then how they came of age in Austin, and how Austin really let them expand and get their creative juices going. And Selena's about San Antonio and Corpus Christi. So all these biographies are about place. This is the first one, and it's with an academic press. It was with UT Press and A&M Press, because I couldn't get Little Brown, my publisher in New York, to do it. My editor said, I don't do city books. And I said, you don't do city books? Then I actually tried. You don't do David Calvert's Twilight of the Gods, which is a book about post-hippie San Francisco. And it's got, you know, it's got a lot of stories that lead to the San Francisco of today, and sold very well. No, I wouldn't have done that one. So it's like I had to take I'm a hardhead, and I wanted to tell the story. So, you know, I tried with UT Press, and that didn't work. And I found A&M Press, and it took a little bit longer. But this is the book I wanted to write. And no matter how that does, if that's selfish, if that's a career killer, if I don't make money off of it, and there's a good likelihood I won't. But I got to tell the story I wanted to tell. And as a writer, you know, it's in me, and I got it out. And whether I got it right or not, you tell me. If I didn't get it right, I hope you're talented enough. Maybe you can write your own book and correct the history, or tell your history. I was talking to Cleve Hattersley yesterday, exchanging messages, and something that he's looking for, I can't remember, Cliff Carter. I said, I don't know what happened to him. He said, well, something about alcohol, and I don't know if he lived or died. He was an artist, and I just told Cleve, I said, well, it's your turn now. And he's working on his story because he started Greasy Wheels. He was the band that drew the crowd when Willie got the lines to lay down for the lambs of the armadillo. Greasy Wheels were a bigger draw than Willie was. And he's, you know, he booked the Lone Star Cafe in the 70s and 80s and was terribly cheap when Joe King played here with me. I couldn't wait till we moved to another room. But he's going to tell his story, and it's like, these are important stories to be told. So, selfish, I got to tell mine, and I hope people enjoy it. And really, trigger a memory, if you have any experience with Austin, it doesn't have to be what I wrote. But if I trigger, if somebody read and it triggers another memory, then I've done my job as a writer, because writing's all about the imagination. Film is the best way to tell a story if you want to reach the biggest audience, but you cut corners, you can't do detail, and you don't require the audience to use their imagination. The visuals do it for you. This, you got to use your imagination. And if I've taken you back, I've done my job. And if I haven't taken you back, it's like, well, I'm sorry. But I'm selfish, and I got to tell the tale I wanted to tell. And so, Austin, whatever you call it, I mean, I got to, it's my book of Austin. And here's my story, but it's only one of many. And I look forward to telling something else. And I look forward to more people telling stories about Austin. So thank you. I've talked way too long, and I better not blow my voice out, because I've got a party at 6 o'clock in front of the KRTS Studios in Marfa. I have Chuck Williamson, one of the Texas Music Power image writers is here. If you can't come, go over to the Texas Music Hour Power page on Facebook, because Chuck is going to Facebook Live. We're going to do a live broadcast. We're going to solicit people for funds, and we're going to have some live performances. But basically, we're there to cause trouble. And I was told that rarely does anything get stirred up. At Marfa Public Radio Studios, we're stirring up a ruckus tonight. We've got drinks. We've got complimentary perfume for the ladies. And we do have right around 8:20. We've done limbo contests in the past, and not to challenge anyone, but we're trying to be more inclusive. We have a twist contest. I don't know who you are or what you do. Everybody can twist, and we're going to have cash prizes. So come on out if you can. If you want to buy a book and get one signed, this is